My boss fired me for taking time off for my dad's funeral, so I sued the company, got a payout, and made his reputation collapse overnight. I'm a 26-year-old guy working full-time at a mid-sized tech firm, and the day my father died, I still went to work. It wasn't because I'm cold or numb. It's because I was terrified. At my job, we don't grieve, we produce. My boss, Greg, has this unspoken rule. If you want to keep your seat, you better act like nothing touches you. And I needed that seat. Rent doesn't stop just because your heart does. I got the call from my mom at 5:13 a.m. She was sobbing so hard I couldn't understand her at first. "He's gone," she finally managed. My dad had a heart attack in his sleep. No warning. No last words. Just silence. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, still holding the phone to my ear and staring at the dark ceiling. Then I glanced at the clock. If I left by 7:15, I could still make it in by 8. That was my first thought. Not how to get to my mom, not what kind of casket he'd want. Just, would Greg notice if I didn't show up? At work, no one knew. I didn't tell them. I answered emails. I debugged code. I sat through a Zoom call where Greg lectured us about owning our grind. I swallowed it all, one cold sip at a time. Meanwhile, my mom was falling apart. My little brother didn't even want to eat. And I was pretending the man who taught me how to ride a bike hadn't just died in his sleep. By noon, my inbox was overflowing with tasks. Nobody asked why my eyes were red. Nobody noticed the way I flinched when Slack pinged. I thought maybe I'd asked for time off the next day. Just a couple of days. Just enough to say goodbye, but even that turned out to be too much to ask. The next morning, I showed up to work again. I'd spent the night writing my dad's obituary, trying to console my mom between her panic spells, and figuring out funeral arrangements none of us were ready for. I barely slept, but I still made it to the office on time, because I knew I had to ask. Around 10 a.m., I finally worked up the nerve to knock on Greg's glass door. He looked up from his desk with that same forced smile he gave during budget cuts. "Yeah?" he said, barely looking up. "My dad passed away yesterday morning." I kept my voice low, like saying it too loudly would break something in me. "I'd like to take 3 days off for the funeral, just to help my mom get things in order." He stared at me like I'd asked for a paid trip to Paris. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. A short, sarcastic bark. "You're telling me this now?" he said, shaking his head. "You should have told me yesterday when it happened. You were here, weren't you?" I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I showed up because I was afraid of this exact moment? Greg stood up, walked over to the window, and sighed dramatically. "Look, we've got deadlines. Q4 is coming. You're a key player. I can't have people vanishing on short notice. If everyone left every time someone died, nothing would get done." He turned back to me, arms crossed. "I need team players right now, but I'll allow the 3 days if you understand what it means." "What does it mean?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "That I'll have to consider whether you're still the right fit here." I nodded. What else was I supposed to do? My dad was dead, my family was broken, and now I was being punished for mourning. I left his office feeling like I'd just signed my own execution. The day of the funeral, I woke up at 6 a.m. in a cold sweat, half convinced I'd missed a meeting. That's how deep Greg's grip had sunk into my brain. I had 3 days, just 3, to bury my father, comfort my grieving mother, and somehow not fall apart myself. The house was full of relatives I barely remembered, and casseroles no one wanted to eat. My mom couldn't stop shaking. My little brother, who's only 13, kept pacing around like he was looking for someone to blame. I was the one handling the suit for the body, the service schedule, the obituary layout, the flower delivery. All of it. Somewhere in between writing my dad's eulogy and making sure my mom had eaten, I checked my work email. Just out of habit, there it was, 5 unread messages. One from Greg, need status update on the client portal redesign. Hope things are going okay. No, I'm sorry. No, take care of your family. Just hope things are okay. Like my dad stubbed his toe instead of dying. At the funeral, I stood at the podium, clutching a printed speech with shaking hands. I spoke about my dad's quiet strength, the way he taught me how to drive by just watching until I figured it out, how he always brought home something for my brother after work, even when money was tight. When I looked up, my mom was weeping silently into a tissue. My brother stared blankly at the floor, and then my phone buzzed. A Slack notification my coworker Jenna had messaged, "Greg's really not happy. Says we're falling behind because of you." I turned my phone over and set it on the pew beside me. I was trying to say goodbye to my father, but somehow I was still chained to a desk I wasn't even sitting at, and in that moment I knew this wasn't over. The day after the funeral, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, emails, Slack pings. For a second, I thought maybe something happened to my mom. Some new emergency. But when I opened my inbox, the subject line hit me like a punch to the chest. Separation notification, effective immediately. Greg had sent it at 6:42 a.m. No phone call. No meeting. Just a cold, templated email informing me that I was being let go due to performance concerns and incompatibility with future objectives. My hands went numb. I blinked, reread it, and then checked the sender again. But it was real. My access to the internal server was already revoked. My Slack account disabled. The irony? I'd planned to go back in that morning. 3 days weren't enough, but I was ready to return. I was that loyal. That broken, I called Greg's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried HR, no response. When I checked my benefits portal, I saw that my health insurance was already flagged for cancellation at the end of the month. My mom was still in bed, barely eating, barely functioning. My little brother had a breakdown the night before and threw his phone at the wall. And now, on top of everything, I had to tell them I was jobless. I stared at the screen for a long time, just reading that email over and over. Separation notification. Like I was just some malfunctioning part that needed to be replaced. And the worst part? I still felt guilty. Like I deserved it for putting my family before my job. I thought maybe I'd find another job quickly. Maybe I could fix this. But then, something unexpected happened. A week later, I was sitting alone at O'Malley's, a dive bar 2 blocks from my apartment, nursing the same whiskey for over an hour. I hadn't told many people what happened. Not even close friends. It felt humiliating. But I just needed to be around people, even if I wasn't speaking to any of them. That's when I saw him. Tyler, Greg's son. He was sitting at the far end of the bar with a couple of friends, clearly already a few drinks deep. I knew it was him. We'd met once at a company picnic. Back when Greg still pretended to be human. I tried to look away, but too late. Tyler squinted, then pointed. "Yo! You're that guy, worked for my dad, right?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, I was." He stumbled over, drink in hand, completely unaware of how bitter I was feeling. "Man, that sucks what happened to you. My dad said you chose your family over your future, or something like that." He laughed like it was a punchline. I didn't respond. I just sipped my drink, but Tyler kept talking. He's always doing that keeps a list on his laptop, no joke, of people who aren't mentally strong enough for the company. Calls it his blacklist. Fires them before they drag things down. He even bragged about canning you before you left. Said it was a test to see if you'd break protocol. I sat still, but inside I was vibrating. He said all that? Oh yeah. He thinks HR's a joke. Said if they won't do it, he'll find a way around. Tyler laughed again. "Man, corporate America, huh?" He had no idea what he'd just handed me. No clue, that wasn't just unethical. That was malicious, and suddenly I wasn't grieving anymore. I was planning. The next morning I woke up with a pounding head, not from drinking, but from replaying Tyler's words all night. Blacklist, premeditated firing. Bragged about it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I opened my laptop and searched wrongful termination lawyer near me. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to know if I was crazy or if what happened was actually illegal. A name popped up, Jasmine Patel, employment law, 10+ years experience, strong reviews. I booked a consultation and showed up the next day with my printed termination email, Slack screenshots, and everything I could remember Greg had said to me. Jasmine read through it slowly, her face unreadable. Then she leaned back and asked one question. "You said his son told you it was premeditated?" I nodded. "He said Greg bragged about firing me before I even requested leave, that it was a test to see if I'd break protocol." He laughed about it. She tilted her head, thinking, "If we can confirm that, you might have a hostile work environment and wrongful termination case, possibly retaliation. Especially since it followed a death in the family. It paints a cruel pattern." That's when I told her about the blacklist. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. You get me proof of that. Even hearsay from a credible witness, and this goes from strong to bulletproof. I left her office with a business card and a strange sensation in my chest. Not hope, rage. Cold, clean rage. I didn't want to move on anymore. I wanted accountability, so I sent a text to Tyler. Hey, about what you said at the bar. Would you be willing to say that again, on record? 3 dots appeared. Then he replied, funny timing. I actually have something that might help. Tyler sent me an audio file that night. Just dropped it into our chat like it was nothing. No context, no warning. I sat there staring at the waveform, thumb hovering over the play button, heart pounding so loud I almost didn't need to hit it. But I did. It was a voice recording, scratchy but clear. Tyler's voice came in first, slurred from alcohol. My dad's a total psycho, man. Fired this dude after his dad died. Like literally fired him for going to a funeral. Said he was too emotionally weak for corporate warfare. His friend snorted in the background. That's cold, Tyler replied. Oh, it gets worse. Dude had already made up his mind to can the guy before he even asked for leave. Said it would be a loyalty test. He brags about his blacklist, calls it the fridge like he's putting people on ice. What the hell, right? I sat frozen. That audio was damning. More than just office gossip, it was proof. My hands were shaking when I sent the file to Jasmine. She called me within the hour. I'm submitting a letter of intent first thing tomorrow, she said. That's retaliation, premeditated firing, and a pattern of emotional cruelty. We've got grounds for full damages and public exposure if this goes to court. For the first time since my dad died, I felt the smallest flicker of control return to my body. Not peace, power. Greg had spent years bullying people in silence. But this time, he left his fingerprints on the knife and I was done bleeding. Now, it was his turn to squirm. Even with the case building, life didn't magically start getting better. The lawsuit was moving forward, sure, but I was still unemployed. Rent was overdue. My savings had barely lasted a month and most of it had gone toward funeral costs. The stress wasn't just sitting on my chest, it was carving its name into my spine. I applied everywhere. Tech firms, startups, even remote gigs that paid pennies. But the second they saw the gap in my resume or asked why I left my last job, things got quiet. That email from Greg, with its vague performance concerns, followed me like a shadow. But the worst day, was when my mom called sobbing. They're taking the house, she choked out. I thought I had more time, but the bank, I couldn't even respond. My throat locked up. That house was all we had left of him. The porch where my dad used to sip his coffee in silence. The garage where he kept his tools lined up like soldiers. The tiny crack in the hallway, wall from when my brother tripped chasing a balloon. Gone. Because I stood up for my family. Because I dared to grieve. Drove to her place that night and sat with her on the floor of the living room, boxes piled around us like graves, watching a rerun of some cooking show on mute because we couldn't think of what else to do. I'm sorry, I whispered, not even sure if I was saying it to her or to my dad. And in that moment, I hated Greg more than I thought possible. Not just for the job, not even for the email, but for the way he turned grief into a liability, for turning my father's death into a reason to destroy everything we had left. But he wasn't going to get away with it. He didn't know it yet. But I was about to bury him next. When Jasmine officially filed the lawsuit, it didn't just land, it exploded. The legal complaint outlined everything. The timing of my termination, Greg's blacklist, the recorded audio of his own son bragging about the loyalty test and my denied bereavement leave. She didn't hold back. She sent it directly to the company's legal department, CCing HR, the CEO, and 2 board members. Within 48 hours, I got my first email from HR. It was short, clipped, and clearly panicked. We are aware of the complaint and would like to open a private channel of resolution. I didn't reply. Jasmine did. She let them know we were open to a fair settlement, but if they tried to silence it, we'd go public. That's when it started. The flood. Former employees, people I hadn't heard from in years, started messaging me. One said Greg made her work through a miscarriage. Another said he was forced out after reporting burnout to HR. A guy from marketing told me Greg used to call him liability bait because he had a stutter. They were coming out of the woodwork. And suddenly my quiet little case wasn't quiet anymore. Jasmine forwarded me an internal memo that got leaked from someone inside. It was titled, Urgent Risk Assessment, Potential PR Fallout from Legal Filing. Greg's name was all over it. They were worried about the optics, not the morality, not the cruelty. Just the headlines. That's when HR called again, this time offering a lowball settlement, just to make things go away. I said no, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every name Greg ever crossed off that blacklist. Every person he crushed in silence. I wanted him to feel cornered, exposed, and thanks to a glitchy Zoom call, he would be. When Jasmine officially filed the lawsuit, it didn't just land, it exploded. The legal complaint outlined everything: the timing of my termination, Greg's blacklist, the recorded audio of his own son bragging about the loyalty test and my denied bereavement leave. She didn't hold back. She sent it directly to the company's legal department, CCing HR, the CEO, and 2 board members. Within 48 hours, I got my first email from HR. It was short, clipped, and clearly panicked. We are aware of the complaint and would like to open a private channel of resolution. I didn't reply. Jasmine did. She let them know we were open to a fair settlement, but if they tried to silence it, we'd go public. That's when it started. The flood. Former employees, people I hadn't heard from in years, started messaging me. One said Greg made her work through a miscarriage. Another said he was forced out after reporting burnout to HR. A guy from marketing told me Greg used to call him liability bait because he had a stutter. They were coming out of the woodwork. And suddenly my quiet little case wasn't quiet anymore. Jasmine forwarded me an internal memo that got leaked from someone inside. It was titled, Urgent Risk Assessment, Potential PR Fallout from Legal Filing. Greg's name was all over it. They were worried about the optics, not the morality, not the cruelty. Just the headlines. That's when HR called again, this time offering a lowball settlement, just to make things go away. I said no, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every name Greg ever crossed off that blacklist. Every person he crushed in silence. I wanted him to feel cornered, exposed, and thanks to a glitchy Zoom call, he would be. By the time the dust started to settle, Greg had gone dark. No more public statements. No more Zoom rants. Word got out internally that he was taking a leave of absence, but everyone knew what that meant. I got the settlement offer a week later. 6 figures, clean. No admission of guilt, of course, but it covered the legal fees, the missed pay, and a chunk of what I lost trying to hold my family together. Jasmine called it a quiet win. I almost didn't take it. Not out of pride, but because part of me wanted to drag it all the way through court. Wanted him on a witness stand, sweating under oath. Wanted every former employee to get a chance to speak, but I also wanted to breathe again. So I signed, and then something unexpected happened. A Reddit thread, not started by me, began climbing the front page. The title? Worked under Greg, AMA. That guy was a nightmare. The replies poured in. Hundreds of stories. People who had been humiliated in meetings, denied leave for surgeries, laughed at during mental health breakdowns. It turned into a digital reckoning. One comment called it Greg's graveyard. That thread did more than the lawsuit ever could. It validated me. I wasn't alone. I wasn't sensitive or dramatic or weak. I was part of a pattern, and now that pattern had a name. Greg's reputation. Finished. The CEO removed his profile from the leadership page. Industry blogs started publishing toxic leadership exposés. Even LinkedIn turned on him. But the part that stuck with me most was a message I got from a stranger. I read your story. I didn't go to my dad's funeral because I was scared of losing my job. I'll never get that chance back. Thank you for standing up. That meant more than the check ever could. But I still had one last thing to do. 2 months after everything, after the lawsuit, the headlines, the payout, I finally did something I'd been avoiding. I took my dad's ashes to the ocean. He always loved the sea. We used to drive out to the coast every summer. No agenda, just salt air, cheap sandwiches, and hours of watching the tide roll in. He'd always say, "This is where I feel clean." So I drove 3 hours in silence, with the urn buckled into the passenger seat like he was still riding shotgun. My mom wasn't ready to come, and I didn't ask my brother. This part was for me. I parked near a quiet cliff overlooking the water, where the breeze hits your chest like a second heartbeat. I climbed down to the rocks barefoot, the wind whipping against my face, and sat there for a while, just holding the urn. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. I opened the lid and let the ashes scatter slowly into the wind. Some blew back into my face, sticking to my shirt. That felt right. That felt like him being stubborn one last time. "I'm okay now, Dad," I whispered. "You don't have to worry anymore." I watched the last of him disappear into the blue. The waves didn't crash. They just carried. On the drive back, I didn't think about Greg, or the company, or the money. I thought about the way my dad used to grip the steering wheel with one hand and hum off key to old rock songs. The way he always told me to choose peace over pride. I didn't get revenge. Not really. I got something quieter. I got freedom, and if I had to lose everything to finally find that, then maybe it wasn't a loss after all.